Hello, Raven City friends. We are so glad that you purchased our dirt bag and we got to introduce wet clay as a walk-in option into our paint your own pottery studio. So today with your purchase, you are going to receive a tile that kind of looks like this, a mat that you're going to be making your project on, 1 pound of clay, a paintbrush, a rib, a sponge, a needle tool, and some slip. Your slip probably won't be this much, but you will have some slip in your project. So I'm going to teach you 3 fundamental things for the hand building process. I want you to pay special attention to the slip and score technique. This technique is so important when you are making hand build piece. This is what's going to keep your piece from not falling apart and staying together during the drying process and the kiln process. I'm going to be moving to a close-up view so you can only see my hands, but I'll be talking through the whole demonstration. Thank you again for purchasing the dirt clay package, and we can't wait to see your creations. So the first technique I'm going to show you today is called, for hand building, is the pinch pot. And so what you'll do is you'll grab some clay, roll it into a ball, and my goal is to get my walls and my bottom about 1/4 inch thick. It's okay if it's a little thicker. We will make sure that it's dry before we put it in the kiln. Okay, so my ball right here, it's not perfect, but it's all right. So this is called the pinching technique. So I went ahead and put a hole. I didn't go all the way through the bottom, about 1/4 inch down. You can kind of feel it through. And now I'm gonna slowly pinch my pot into a bowl shape. Until it's even on all sides. As you can see, as I pinch and turn, pinch and turn, pinch and turn, pinch and turn. Don't worry about any little cracks or anything. We can rub those out. However, when you're using clay, you don't want to use too much water because it can make it slimy and weaken it. So caution with the water. Sometimes I see little kids and they just get so excited about having a cup of water in front of them. So I always have a rule when I teach classes, especially with little kids, that they're only allowed to dip their finger in the water and then put it on that way. They're not allowed to get a sponge and pinch it. So, or, give it a bath. Okay, so this is a pinch pot using the pinch technique. So see how I have those little cracks? I can just use my finger and lightly smooth it out. If it starts to get a little too dry, you can always dip your finger in a dab of water, or if you have a wet sponge that came in your clay pack, just rub your finger on that wet sponge and smooth out any imperfections. Okay, so that's the first technique. It's called the pinch pot technique. Okay, the second technique we're gonna learn is the coil technique. And making a coil is just like when you were a little kid and played with Play-Doh. You can make all different kinds of coils. So like when we think of coils, we think of these little strands of like spaghetti that we did when you were a kid. That looks very similar to this, right? Okay, so, and that is a coil. But in pottery, you can have different kinds of coils. So there's one, right? And that would be like the snake technique. And then I'm going to show you that you can make this would also be considered like a coil. So I'm just like pinching it into kind of like a brick shape. I could tap it, make a little square out of it. So that could also be considered a coil or like an attachment. So say I wanted to turn this pinch pot into something like this monster, I would make this kind of coil and attach the legs, and then this part would turn into my antennas, and then I could make a ball for the eyeball. Okay, so I'm going to just continue to build on this pinch pot to show you the different techniques, but you could have a flat piece of clay and you could make a coil pot. You could make a whole bunch of coils and like build it up around like this, or you could just like, you know, make a pinch pot and turn it into something different than just a bowl, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and show you like the monster that I just showed you. So I'm going to just make a small antenna. This clay is kind of soft, so now I have this piece, and say I want to put it right here. If I were just to try to smush it on there, it would fall off. And so we have to do this technique called slip and scoring, which is a fancy word for scratch and attach. So I'm going to take the bottom of my piece and I'm going to scratch it, and I'm going to be generous with my scratches. And then wherever you put it on your piece, you also have to scratch it. So I'm going to make a little mark right here because that's where I want to put it. I'm going to scratch it. And then I'm going to use my slip with my paintbrush. Put some on both spots. Wiggle, jiggle, jiggle till it stays. So now it like is attached and is not going to fall off as easily, right? So now I'm just going to go ahead and shape it and how I want it on my piece. Once you get it attached, it's a good idea to take your paintbrush and just clean up any little edges. And then this helps compress the clay to make sure it doesn't fall off later. Okay, so that is the most important step, is the slip and scoring technique. And so now I'm going to do my eyeball. And I'm just showing you techniques right now. I'm not actually showing you this project. I just want you to pay attention to the technique. So again, this was a pinch pot, and now this we're using as a coil technique. So that's two fundamentals of hand building. Now I'm going to show you something that is called slab building. And so a lot of times when you see people drinking out of mugs or something like that, it comes from a slab, and that's like part, and then also like platters and little dishes you can make out of a slab. So I'm just going to go ahead and ball my clay up. I'm going to use my handy dandy rolling pin. And you want to roll it out to about 1/4 inch thick. Okay, so this is my slab. And then so see, I made a couple little marks here with my hand or whatever. I'm gonna go ahead and take my rubber rib, my wet sponge, and I'm just gonna smooth it out. It doesn't have to be perfect, because what kind of handmade project is perfect? As you get better, it'll look really good. So I'm gonna go ahead, I think, and make a trinket dish. I'm gonna make it super simple. I'm gonna go ahead and grab a cookie cutter real quick and show you a little trinket dish. So I'm gonna go ahead and use the heart one because it just happens to be close to Valentine's Day right now. So why not, right? So I'm gonna gently push out that heart. And now I'm going to make a coil that's going to go around the heart. I'm going to slip and score it on. This would be a great little gift for Mother's Day, Valentine's Day from a little one. So I'm going to try to make my coil big enough to go all the way around the heart, but I'm not going to make it too fat because I want to make it proportionate to the piece I made. Another thing to keep in mind is clay has a shrinkage rate, and so know that your piece is just going to be a little bit smaller than what you actually made it, because there's water in clay, and so that clay is going to evaporate it when you put it in the kiln to 1800 degrees. So keep that in mind when you're making your creations. So now I have to attach this coil all the way around my heart. And what technique do you think we're going to use when we do that? The slip and score technique, right? So I'm going to go ahead and take my needle tool, which I lost. It's right here. Cut that. And I'm going to go ahead and start the scratching process. So remember, you have to scratch it not only on one side, but both sides, wherever the clay connects. I always tell the kids, scratch and attach, and then do the wiggle, jiggle, jiggle. So every time you put your piece down and glue it on, you want to give it a little wiggle to make sure it stays. So as you can see, I'm scratching on both sides. And then I'm going to attach, I'm going to do little sections at a time, just so you guys can see the full effect. Scratch and attach. Okay. So just because of the timing, I'm going to go ahead and only do part of my heart so I can show you. So we're going to pretend I scratched and attached that whole thing, and then there's a coil all the way around it. I'm going to go ahead and do my wiggle, jiggle, jiggle to make sure nothing comes off. I'm going to take my paintbrush. I like to dip it in water and then I squeeze out the water because you don't want it wet, right? And then I just clean up the edges. Get rid of any imperfections on the inside and the outside. And then you have a trinket dish. All right, thank you for learning the 3 fundamentals of hand building, and make sure you look at our project ideas in the materials shelf and start creating. Have a good day.